Welcome. Hello, everybody, to the Friday live show, ToSalem. I'm so glad to be here today. I have a lot to talk about, a lot to say. I'm very excited to hear what you think about some things that have been on my mind lately. I'm doing whiskey today. It's a whiskey kind of day. Templeton Rye, also known as the good stuff, according to the bottle. Let me pour a little bit of that, and then we'll get into what I want to talk about. I hope your week was good. I hope you're feeling good. I hope your brain's on fire, like mine is. I hope all of this for you and much more. Cheers, you beautiful fucking person. Oh, it's so good. It feels so good when it burns. I want to light some incense while I tell you what we're going to be talking about today. I didn't plan because of last week. Not really doing the planning thing anymore. But I have an idea. I kind of just want to tell you some things that have been on my mind. Repercussions of the sort of stuff that we talked about last week. I just got this instance, actually. It's called Haunted Halloween. And it smells like autumn. This is what the box looks like, if you want to get it. Smells like autumn. Let's just leave it there. If it wasn't so overpowering. I really like the way this looks. Shroud of smoke. So last week, if you tuned into the stream, you know that I talked a lot about some personal changes, some, stuff that I had realized about myself and esotericism and emotional growth and all that stuff. This week, sandalwood. Amen. I love sandalwood. God, I'm glad you said that. I haven't thought of sandalwood in forever. Jesus. It's like sandalwood's like that instance I started with, sandalwood and patchouli, and then I moved on and I haven't really gone back yet. I'm gonna go get some sandalwood. I'm wearing today, I'm about to put it on. I don't actually know what's in this and I can't get the cap on. This is Moon Dancer, I think is the brand. Yeah, mdancer.com. This is Sorcerer Oil. I got it from a New Age store near me. I'll put some of that on. Because if you don't smell right, how can you do anything worth doing? That's what I say. On the wrists, on the neck. Ooh, I smell powerful. Ooh, shudder. All right. So, a lot has happened in the past week in terms of continuing kind of the conversations we were having last week. But the big thing I really want to talk about, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of that, but I kind of want to get you all's opinion on some stuff too, because I've been thinking a lot about this week about, since I've started doing these Friday streams, people just in my personal life who are watching. My best friend's one of them. My mom is one of them. What's up, Mom? And others who are interested in this sort of stuff, but haven't really, esotericism, but haven't really, taken the plunge or whatever. I have noticed a recurring thing in having conversations with them. So it seems to be a thing that people struggle with in terms of embracing esotericism. So I thought, let's just talk about it. And let's see if we can't figure out some pathways out. I have pathways out. I want to hear what your pathways are. Let me know. Here's the thing. The big challenge, right, to an esoteric, magical, spiritual worldview, in the West anyway, is rational materialism, okay? That's the big problem. And so I guess the question I want to start by asking is, what are some ways out of that? What are some ways to think that are convincing enough arguments, or maybe just enticing enough for us to disrobe ourselves of the idea that materialism and rationalism are inherently good, or that they should be all-consuming worldviews, or all-encompassing worldviews, or that we should use them as compasses to orient our own worldviews. I want to talk a little bit about that. I don't think we're like weird for having this problem. It makes sense. Something I've noticed, totally anecdotally, but if you're tuning to this for hard facts, you're probably going to be disappointed for most of the show. Something I've noticed in my own life, anecdotally. I grew up in the South, the Bible Belt, Tennessee, mid-Tennessee. So not as fundamental as it gets, which would be like in Alabama or Mississippi, but definitely way south of that Mason-Dixon line, and therefore very fundamental and Protestant and evangelical. And something I noticed growing up was that fundamentalism leads very easily and quickly to atheism, specifically Christianity. Fundamentalist Christianity leads very quickly, smoothly, and easily to atheism or agnosticism. When I say fundamentalism, what I mean in this context is the basic idea. We'll stick with the Christian context because I imagine most of us are familiar with that. Oh yeah, I do have them. Yeah. Dude on Twitch just pointed this out. My sticks. You know what I'm currently learning is paradiddle. Paradiddle is right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left. Paradiddle, paradiddle. Oh, let's screw my light up. Boy, that is fun. I've never done like drum lines patterns before and just done them. I can paradiddle for like 30 minutes and just totally zone out. Anyway, in the American South, at least in the 90s and early 2000s, and I imagine it's still this way today, the idea that God, the Christian God, was a materially real entity out there in the cosmos, and that conversely Satan was a materially real entity somewhere in the depths of some, I'm not even sure where hell is in Christian cosmology. Sometimes it feels like it's a part of material reality. Sometimes it feels like it's a separate realm in and of itself. I'm not sure what the deal is there, honestly. But anyway, the point is that heaven and hell are both real, and they are both either a part of or separate from material reality. And they are inhabited by the actual souls of people who actually lived on Earth at one point or were divine creatures wrapped up in a cosmic drama. All right. That's how I was raised. No doubt it's how many of you were raised. The reason I think that lends itself to atheism very easily, as soon as you like kind of get into adolescence, is it's a very limited framework. It's terribly limited to say that there are all-powerful anything out there who are simultaneously writing the future and also giving you freedom within what they're writing. It's a paradox, and one I'm sure theologians have a brilliant explanation for. That's not really the point. The point is that worldview is limiting because it doesn't account for all of human nature. First off, the idea that half of your nature, again, sticking specifically with Christianity, that half of your nature is rooted in a thing called sin, and that sin is cosmically bad. And therefore, half of you at least, is cosmically bad. It's a very limiting idea. What if, for instance, you want to do some sinful things and, in the pursuit of something good? Or what if you want to do some sinful things because it feels good and it's not hurting anybody? It's very limiting, and it doesn't account for, almost any nuanced interpretation of a single human being. So people drift away from it very quickly towards, and the reaction is typically atheism or agnosticism, because it's like, well, I can't believe that that's real because it's so stupid and it's so limited and it's so pointless and it's so like, even if it's true, I don't want to believe it, screw that. I'm not wanting part of it. Oftentimes the rebellion to that thought, let's say, is atheism or agnosticism. But I've also noticed that let's say, polytheistic or neo-pagan contemporary view is a logical step from atheism or agnosticism. So you could almost track it going fundamentalist religion to atheism / agnosticism, because agnosticism is just like, I consider them essentially the same thing. And then from that to a neo-pagan or an esoteric or a magical universal view. I think that's a logical progression. But the people who like watch the stream, who I'm close to, who talk to me about the things that I'm talking about, that seems to be their hang up, is making that leap from materialism to spirituality or esotericism. And so before we draw some cards, go ahead and throw stuff in chat on the Twitch and the YouTube and the Facebook if you want to, and I will pull some cards for you in a bit. Before we get to that, I just want to talk a little bit about some things that we can think about, things that we can, ideas that we can give ourselves to help us make that leap or see that that leap is like one that needs to be made. All right, 365, what you saying? You're saying if you believe energy is the power behind change and you are creator being, then the material can be a trap if it dominates. Religion or doctrine is a way to control the actions and morals of its followers. Let me break that down. The second part, it is a way to control, 100%. If you believe energy is the power behind change, okay, with you, and you are a creator being, yes, then the material can be a trap if it dominates. Oh, I get you. I actually want to talk about that. So thank you for bringing it up. I'm an artist, right? And my art is music. My art is film. My art is new media stuff. I'm currently working on an expanded reality thing. My art is writing. I'm not a super visual artist. I'm more of a sonic artist. Even when I write, I tend to talk while I'm writing. I tend to like to read the words and hear how they sound. I like to be read too. So a lot for me is sonic. And when you are an artist of any ilk, you are honestly trying to like make stuff that's new and distinct to your experience on this planet, something you'll no doubt encounter pretty quickly are the limitations of materialism. And this is what you're talking about, 365. You're a creator being. The material can be a trap if it dominates. There are so many beautiful, glorious, ephemeral, ethereal aspects of a single human being and their emotional reality on this planet. So many. Even if you don't want to buy into the idea of universal energies or cosmic anything, any single human's emotional life on any given day, their internal life and how that is prompting them to respond out in the world, that is such a nuanced, complicated thing that to sit down and try to explain it in rational language would and does for a lot of people take an entire life's worth of work. When to explore the exact same waters in a painting might take you a few weeks. Art is efficient. Art is more efficient than reason. Art is, I would say, wildly more efficient than reason. Art is faster. Art is more interesting, more stimulating. It's a bunch of stuff. If you are operating within a materialist, rationalist worldview, the things that you are cutting yourself off from, and I'm speaking specifically artistically because that's what I have the most familiarity with, are so vast that, you're limiting your art severely at that point. There's something that happens when you're making something, all right? You don't have to be an artist, but just if you like to make things, period. And making things could be anything. It could be like, for a bunch of like my friends growing up, making things meant that we went and watched a movie and then went out after and had coffee and talked about it for like 6 hours. That's a form of creation, right? We are experiencing this thing together, this moment in time, bringing all of our varied contextual understanding to it, all of our baggage from that day and that year and that lifetime to that single place in space and time and experiencing that single artistic vision. And then we are together in a loving, respectful, decent way, having an ongoing conversation. We are layering on top of this experience, layer after layer after layer of, I don't even know what you would call it. It's sort of like simulated versions of the experience that we just had, constant interpretations and reinterpretations. And that is a creative act. If you're doing it the way we were doing it, which was not just, yeah, I liked it. It was more like, it was churning. We were gnawing on things. We were understanding things. We were regurgitating things, especially if the movie was really good or the play was really good or whatever. Creative act. So it can't even be that. It doesn't have to be that you are out in the world making art, quote unquote. But if you're creating anything, the limitations of materialism and rationalism are technical, right? A very, very skilled technician and materialist will create a certain kind of art. And for me, that's like Thomas Kincaid or something. It is very good to look at, but it doesn't grab. It doesn't, you know, let you, it doesn't force you to reckon with it in the same way that, you know, someone like, oh God, Degas, or even a really, really popular artist like, I'm trying to think of a really good popular artist, Dali, like a Dali. That work forces you to reckon with it. It forces you. You don't have a choice. You look at it and you have, well, you have a choice, but you only have one. The choice is walk away and pretend you didn't see it, or reckon with it. That's all you got. And the reason it has that effect on you is because it's stimulating these deep subconscious animal things in you, because he's doing real creative work, Dali in this case, which is not strictly technical. It's only as technical as it needs to be, which to me is like the hardest thing about creating anything, is finding that line. Where is the line that it's, you know, this is as technical as this thing needs to be, and let's not go any further. It's very tempting when you're making stuff. I know I'm off on a tangent, but it's very tempting when you're making stuff to make it overly technical and therefore overly pretty or ideal or something like that. At least it's very tempting for me. Anyway, back to the point. All right, so one thing we could say is what 365 just said in chat, which is that a good argument to rationalism or materialism against it as something that you should use to construct a worldview. Because I don't actually think rationalism and materialism are bad. I think they're fantastic servants and horrible masters. That's what I think. I think they're really, really good at putting parameters on things, and they're really, really good at showing you what the field is where you're going to play ball. They're not very good at giving you the tools that you need to play ball well, though. That's how I feel about them. The tools that you need to play ball well, in this case, live a life, are deeper than rational and material. I think they're subconscious and emotional and spiritual. So the first argument would be that materialism is enormously confining, let's say. The second argument might be that it's not super rational, actually, to disregard the esoteric and the magical, especially in the West. What I mean by that is, okay, the West, capital T, capital W. We have built an entire world here in the West on a single idea, which is that there is such a thing as an individual, and that individual is somehow the highest, you know, living in an individual self is somehow the highest thing that someone could attain, right? To be fully, let's use some words we're all familiar with, to reach a state of individuation, to be fully autonomous, to have Christ consciousness. These are individual states. They're states of separateness and unity with divinity, separateness from humanity and unity with a higher state. In the United States, that higher state is commercial. It's like we consider success someone who has distinguished themselves from a poverty place and inserted themselves in a prosperous place. Those are the people we, in the United States anyway, idealize above all others. That is the state, right? Oprah, that is the state that everyone is trying to achieve, and we're being told we should try to achieve. Now, that idea of growth towards increased commercial success, and all the things that you need in order to achieve that commercial success, like work ethic and intelligence and ability to sacrifice and yada yada yada, all the things you need to become Oprah. That process of self-improvement is therefore promoted highly. There are entire industries built around it, almost seen as a divine act. You know, when you read like a lot of self-help books, they'll often interweave esoteric ideas. And I think that feels very natural because this growth towards individuation, right? This growth towards being fully in oneself is super easy to commercialize. Super easy to commercialize. And therefore esotericism, or a form of it, is super easy to commercialize it, which turns a lot of people off of it. So it is only rational in this world, right, where we're all chasing after this higher state, even if we disagree with it, we're still chasing it, this commercial high state. It's only rational in a world like that you would want to take on all of the tools that you can in order to improve, to get closer to being Oprah. It's how we define the use of words such as success and wealth, reading the chat, putting more value on material than on self and community. Yeah, in the West, I would agree. That is exactly what we've done. Words like success and wealth almost are one-to-one correlations to material, I would say. Even though they have deeper spiritual meanings like prosperity in the place of success or wealth, you know, you can use different words to stimulate something that's more nuanced, like prosperity. But I agree. How we define these things is super important. If you're constantly trying to improve, right, and constantly trying to get that whatever success is for you within this commercial construct, it's rational to take on things because you're acting in your own self-interest, right? If you're ever confused by politics, for instance, the only thing you really need to know, I think, is start from a place of assuming that every single politician in the United States is doing the same exact thing at all times, and that is acting in their self-interest. Therefore, the only altruistic thing that ever occurs by way of politics is when their self-interest overlaps with the altruistic thing. No politician does a good thing because it is a good thing. They only do a good thing because it's in their self-interest to do so. So the thing that you can do as a citizen to make change actually happen is make it in the best interest of a politician to promote that change. Not make it altruistic or good or moral. Those aren't the rules of that game, all right? A little bit of a tangent, but we all somewhat know that that's true on like a deep personal level. I just said it, and if you've never heard it before, I would imagine some part of you went, oh, Jesus, that is what's happening. Because it's true. We all know it's true. But what I would say is more uncomfortable than facing that is that same thing extends beyond politics. It extends to us, too. We are like that. I am like that. You are like that. We've been trained to be that way, to be promoting self-interest above all others, all other things. Even we have this, you know, I think it's a fucked up way to think about altruism, but in the West, we have this idea of altruism as like the best thing you can do for yourself, or the best thing you can do for other people is to do good for yourself. And we say that the reason that that is true is that doing good for yourself builds responsibility and competence and all these sorts of traits, which then, if you can somehow spread them out to other people, lifts up their life as well. I'm not saying that's not true, but I'm saying it sure seems like the people who have the most money and power aren't doing it a lot. So it's probably not true past a certain point. Or at least we're not, you know, stimulating the environment correctly so that those people want to do those sorts of things. Anyway, getting back to the point, we are like that. We are self-interested creatures here in the West. I don't know if we're like that by nature. I don't know if I can know if we're like that by nature because I'm too indoctrinated by the Western framework to really know if outside of it I would be different. I don't know. I mean, I hope I would be, but I know that within it, I have to operate from self-interest, as most of us do. So it is therefore only, the only step that you need rationally at that point is a magical worldview, is an esoteric worldview, rationally, something that's going to get you closer to success? That's the question. It depends on how you define success, but let me offer this. If success to you incorporates any kind of contentment or peace of mind or presence, ability to live in a moment, any moment, you know, a sad moment, a happy moment, a sexual moment, intellectual moment, an ecstatic moment, a joyful moment. If happiness to you, if success to you means being able to be in those moments without so much distraction that you're removed from them, being able to be in those moments more fully so that you can feel them more deeply, allow them to enter parts of you and fix maybe things that are broken, that is what the esoteric is almost built for. The the issue that a lot of people, myself included, I went through this for sure. A lot of like quote unquote baby witches go through it. The problem is that in order to get there, you kind of have to get rid of the idea that that when we talk about things like pantheons and we talk about the Godhead and we talk about the multiple faces of the gods and we talk about, you know, Jupiter and Saturn and we talk about all these disparate entities out there floating around, my opinion as someone who really resonates with chaos magic and also Golden Dawn stuff, so traditional ritual magic, my opinion is that you kind of have to get past the idea that these things are materially real as defined in things like the Golden Dawn or Thelema or neo-paganism generally. You kind of have to get deeper. I don't even know what you would call it because it's post. It's like beyond, beyond theism. You're going farther. You're saying something like, I don't know if these entities are real, but more importantly, I don't give a shit. I don't care. Because believing that they are, or letting myself have moments in time, which I think is actually a more healthy way to do it, is not to believe it every day that when you're walking around in every single moment. You don't want to be trying to succumb to the goodness of divinity when you're in fucking Walmart, right? That's going to cause a schism in your brain that's probably going to send you into a deep despair. It's not a good idea. In Walmart, you want to be a materialist. So for me, it's actually healthier not to live in this place all the time, because part of being a contemporary human means that you're going to be forced to be in a fluorescent world every now and then, maybe for 8 hours a day. And when you're in that fluorescent world, being a spiritual person or an esoteric person is actually going to be pretty challenging. And it's going to take an emotional toll that's going to fuck you up. So it's more about, in my mind, carving out spaces for yourself to time, time frames, moments, whatever, pockets where you let yourself have divinity as a gift. You let yourself have access to, the plurality of Godheads. You let yourself have a moment where you are, just for a sliver of time, letting yourself believe that you're in communication with the divine. In the chat here, that their own energy pattern is the web, as we are a pattern on that energy web. Just my view. Well, this brings up what you just said, that the we need a good word for it. We'll just say the gods, even though I don't like that word. We'll say the gods. Believing that the gods are real, or giving yourself a time frame anyway, a pocket, a thing that you do every day or every month or every week or whatever, in which you let yourself believe that they are real, but then come out of after so that you can keep living in this world. The interesting thing about that, and this is where my whole theory on divinity just takes a fucking nosedive. The interesting thing about that is that when you start to give yourself that time in that space, at least in my experience and the experience of every single metaphysician I've ever read or esotericist I've ever read, every friend of mine who's anything like me that I've talked about this sort of stuff to, the interesting thing is that when you do start to give yourself that time, or even acknowledge that giving yourself that time might be a good idea, very weird things start to happen in your material life. Coincidences, synchronicities, emotional reconciliation, spiritual reconciliation, sometimes relationship reconciliation. Weird stuff starts to coalesce. Things start to come together and make sense in a way that seemed, unlikely or impossible before. So that little part of the argument is where I even have trouble addressing it, because there's a big part of me that wants to just fully dive in, like pentagrams tattooed on my body and, all kind of flowy robes. And I probably wouldn't do the flowy robes, but wants to dive into chaos magic or Luciferian magic or left hand stuff, because that stuff resonates more with me. But there's always this little thing holding me back, and that thing is, you still have to live here. But I don't actually think that that's bad. I'm pretty comfortable just kind of accepting that whatever relationship divinity has with me is largely undefinable. And because it's undefinable, I don't really care. When I'm like asked, do you actually believe that gods are real? I don't have a good answer for it, because on the one hand, I believe that it doesn't matter to some degree if they are. If you believe that they are, if you give yourself space to believe that they are, I think your life gets better. And so that on its own is enough for me. But then also, when you believe they are and you start to give yourself that space, material things do start to happen. And they seem to be happening in a way that is specific to you, in a way that only you can really even recognize or interpret. And that is like, that's a slowly growing thing in my mind, where it's like, well, if that's true, then it means that on some level they are real, materially, or something is. But I don't want to go there, if I'm honest. I don't want to go there because I don't think it's productive. I don't think it's, when you read about, people who spent 30 years meditating in Nepal, or people who had ecstatic divine experiences after months of fasting, or, I really like endurance runners, and I really like endurance runners do their thing. I love watching races where runners are going like 100, 150 miles or whatever. I love watching that, and I love watching them get close to the end, and I love the look on their face as they near the end, and I love the look on their face after they finish. I love, and I love feeling it in my own way. Though definitely not on that level, but I love watching people grapple with their material reality and overcome it, and then be rewarded for it. And you just see that in endurance sports. So especially running, which is the one I like. So I watch that a lot, like on YouTube and stuff. And there's something about the kind of transcendence that goes on in that sport, particularly. You can even ask runners. I mean, you could probably get on YouTube right now and just type it in and probably find some people talking about that ecstatic moment, about that divinity when they're doing something very physical, something that kind of removes them from their bodies, that is just so tantalizing to me. General Kratos, great name, man. I love me some God of War. Says, I feel evil energy around me, and I think I can control it. Channeling it to you so you can neutralize it. Hey, man, have you been emailing me? Sorry, me and General Kratos are going to have a little chat. Somebody's been emailing me. I think it might be you. I'm not calling you out. You can be totally honest. It's safe space. If you're the dude emailing me, I do have some things to say to you. If you're not the dude emailing me, we can talk about something. We can talk about what you just put in chat. Are you emailing me, Kratos? Kratos says in the chat, I feel evil energy around me, and I think I can control it. Can I channel it to you so you can neutralize it, is what he said. He or she. I assume he. I'm going to keep talking, Kratos. If you are the dude emailing me. No, you're not. Okay, cool. All right. Then I'll just take your comment on. Somebody else is emailing me with a very similar thing. And I'm not responding to it because I just haven't. All right. A little bit of a pivot. Let's talk about your question. I have a problem with the word evil. First off. What do you mean by evil? Why don't you spell it out to me? We're going to help General Kratos, everybody. Everybody in the chat, that's what we're doing right now. We're pausing our conversation on divinity. Help. If you're in the chat, help me help General. I'm also probably going to pull some cards for you. Let me know what you mean by evil, Kratos, as I shuffle. Look at that. I mean, even before you answer, that your avatar and name is the god of war in the video game series. Energy, love, if I want, harms people. Yeah, I agree, 365. If you want to, so you're saying that you feel like you could hurt people you love? Is that what you mean? And that feels evil? I really don't want to like keep asking you questions and waiting, but I agree with 365. This is a deep question you're asking, and knowing what exactly it is that you're struggling with would help me help you. So give me some deets. I like helping people. God, it feels good. I hope I help you, man. I'm such a big fan of helping people. I'm pulling your cards now. Ooh, all right. I'm just going to show them, and then we'll talk about them. You got Temperance upright. You got Nine of Swords upright. And you got Page of Pentacles upright. Temperance has been coming up a lot. We did a reading last week, and I feel like Temperance came up in that. Or did I just talk about it? I don't remember. Here you help me if people... This energy will help me if people are doing bad to me and will harm them back. Ah, okay. Think that's evil. Yeah. Okay, I think I get what you mean. In esotericism, there's this idea that doing what you want is a prime goal. Crowley came up with it, Aleister Crowley. He didn't come up with it, but he codified it in the phrase that we all remember, which is, do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. All right? He built an entire religion around this phrase, this idea called Thelema. But he got it from esotericism generally up to that point. He derived a lot from Blavatsky and the Golden Dawn and all these sort of disparate sources. And he felt that doing what you want in the world sort of leads you to become a specific type of person. And that specific type of person is the most kind of like powerful, embodied, individuated thing that you can be. And that the way that you get there is ritual magic, which helps you align with what it is that you want. He called it divine will. And once you are aligned with what it is that you want, to then execute those desires out in the world. That all sounds great, Kratos, but Crowley died sick, fat, having pretty much alienated everyone who had ever loved him and supported him, having not succeeded magically, having not succeeded emotionally. Everything that, I mean, it's a big claim, but I think a lot of people, I'm specifically thinking of Gary Lockman, who wrote a really, really good book on Crowley. I think he would agree. And if he agrees, then he's one of the best we got. So if he says it, it's probably true. There are a lot of ways in which Crowley failed completely. And I think the most important of those is that he failed as a good man. He was not a good guy in the end, I don't think. And because he wasn't a good guy, his magic was harmful to himself and other people. And I would bet that for Crowley, I swear this is winding towards what your question was. If you asked Crowley, is it better to have an air of wickedness, which is something he was directly trying to cultivate because he thought it gave him power out in the world, which it certainly did. Is it better to have that, or is it better to not have that air and to be somewhat normal, but to be surrounded by people who you love and people who love you? I think Crowley would answer that the air of wickedness is better. And we can fortunately see where that got him. Alone, destitute, hated. All he is now, even Thelema, his religion, is distancing themselves from him. All he is now is a t-shirt. Now, for some people, being a t-shirt's a big deal. But that he died, even in his time, he was kind of revered. Not revered, but he was well known. He was regarded by a lot of people. He was hated by a lot of people too. So he got what he wanted in his time. He got the image that he wanted, and he got the world responding to that image. And where it left him was sick, alone, laughed at, disregarded. Okay? This is to say nothing of the metaphysical, all right? The way he lived his life was doing kind of what you're talking about. Taking the energy of others around him who were supporting them and using them to his own ends, and crafting a sort of air of wickedness and evil, and justifying a lot of the things he was doing by saying, well, it serves this magical purpose, and that serves my divine will, which, by the way, I determined, but I'm letting myself believe that the gods did. That specific delusion killed him. Okay? I don't think a lot of people who are pretty... Now, I only reference him because he's the one we all kind of know who he is in the metaphysical. I don't think many metaphysicians would disagree with that assessment of the later part of Crowley's life. So, the flip side of the coin, which is love, all right? Love, opposite of evil, I would say. That sort of thing encourages listening, encourages seeing where life takes you instead of imposing your will on it, encourages patience, encourages, leaving room in your heart for other people to impact you and hoping that they leave room for you to impact them. I got a little emotional because I'm currently, whatever. The thing about that, man, the thing about that other way is that you're surprised. You're surprised constantly by the benevolent nature of whatever it is. It brings people into your life who change you, and it brings people into your life who you change. And if you're paying attention, you notice that over time, you are progressing towards a better state. And it may not be the state that you want, but I'm going to ask you a really hard question that we all have to grapple with. I grapple with it every day. We don't like grappling with this question, but it's a very good question for us to ask ourselves on a daily basis here in the West. And here it is. What the fuck do you know about what you want? What makes you think that where you are today has any insight on what you tomorrow will want and need? It's a delusion. It's not real. Nobody knows, right? So you have to leave space in yourself to be changed. You have to leave space. You have to hope that other people leave space for you to change. And that happens through love, not will. They were writing poetry in Auschwitz. I think about that all the time. There's this beautiful Anthony and the Johnson song called Hitler in My Heart. And the chorus of that, go listen to it. The chorus of that song he's one of the most, I think they is the proper pronoun now. Apologies, Anthony fans. When I started listening to Anthony and the Johnsons, the lead singer was male, since transitioned, and I think non-binary now. They, Anthony, whose name is now different too. When he was he, though, and they put out that album that Hitler in My Heart is about, the chorus of that song, and just pause, get quiet for a second, man, just listen to these words and let them hit you. The chorus of that song is, I'll give you a little bit of verse in the chorus because the verse is important. It's, as I search for peace and kindness, I find Hitler in my heart. From the corpses flowers bloom. That chorus, I find Hitler in my heart, from the corpses flowers grow, I think is what he says. I find Hitler in my heart, from the corpses flowers grow. I repeat that to myself all the time, because what it teaches me, and what I hope it teaches you, is evil is limited in a way that goodness is not. Flowers grow from the corpses. They're writing poetry in Auschwitz. Evil, which is we could say a full embodiment of desire, right? Someone so consumed by their own wants and needs that they start to impose it on other people. That's the root of all evil, is the imposition of will, is forcing what you want on other people. We can look at the Holocaust and World War II as a perfect example of what happens when you go down that road. And I constantly think about this idea that from the corpses, flowers grow. There's something about the benevolent nature of goodness that is long-lasting, eternal, surprising, and inspires growth. And there is something about the nature of acting purely from desire, so much so that you impose it on others, that is hindering, limiting, constraining, and ultimately futile. So from a purely pragmatic standpoint, my dude, imposing your will on other people not only doesn't work in the end, but it also ends up killing part of you. And it may be killing the part of you that you actually need to grow. The loving part, the listening part, the waiting part, the hearing part. It's very, very, very hard to listen when you are screaming into a megaphone. Okay? It's really, really hard. If you're screaming, I want, I need, it's hard to hear. It's hard to hear what divinity is telling you, what your mom is telling you, what your friends are telling you, what your lover is telling you. It's hard. It's hard to listen when you're screaming about your will. So that would be the first part of my answer. Let's see what the chat says. Let's see, 365 says, sounds like a shield mirror back created from your energy. Okay. Kim says, my mother had kind of the same thing. If someone did harm to her or her family, the person would be harmed without her doing anything. Indeed, she did not wish harm on anyone. Cause and effect, choice and consequence. It was if the negative energy of the person bounced back immediately. It's interesting to watch. Yeah, well, I think that happens. I do think it happens. And again, I'm going to remove woo-woo from it because let's just talk about it on its base, right? And then we can inject some woo-woo if we want. People can feel when they're being imposed upon. Do you know why? At the core level, I think, let's just tie it to something political because we're all so politically aware these days. Jesus Christ. Tie it to something political. They say, one of my favorite phrases about American politics, because I just love the way it sounds and I think it's probably true, is progressives fall in love and conservatives fall in line. I love that phrase. I love how succinct it is. I love how it perfectly encapsulates the pathology of both, right? That progressives are idealistic and therefore naive, but that both the idealism is an asset that can easily lead to a severe hindrance, and conservatives are orderly, which is an asset for governance, right? Because all government is bureaucracy and organizing. Are orderly, but that the flip side of that coin is that they're subservient, right? That they easily become led by others and don't challenge enough. I love that phrase because it encapsulates both the great thing about conservatives and progressives and also the horrible thing about conservatives and progressives. It reminds us, whatever side of that divide we find ourselves, it reminds us that there's a flip side to all of it, that you must always be aware where your political allegiances are leading your mind, because where it's leading your mind is where it's going to lead who you vote for, what sort of things you support, and you want to be careful. You want to be careful. Just because you like justice doesn't mean you're a social justice warrior. Just because you like peace doesn't mean that you are a war hawk who wants to send troops somewhere to quell some resistance by killing 500 children. But it's really easy for our leaders to convince us that because this one thing is true, this other thing must also be true. So we have to remind ourselves that there are flip sides to these coins, and we are being preyed upon to some degree, manipulated by those in power to try and push us onto those flip sides so that we will let them get away with what it is they actually want to do, which is whatever's in their self-interest. All right, a little tirade. Okay, I like that phrase a lot because of everything I just said, but I also like that it reminds me that the other side of goodness, right, is always just like right there. That there is no such thing as a good, like a wholly good person, right? That this just isn't, we are all drifting between what we might classically call good and evil every single second of every single day. And sometimes, this is the more nuanced answer I would say to what you asked, sometimes imposing your will on someone else is justified, appropriate, and in their best interest. And we have to mitigate constantly if that situation is the one we find ourselves in. But that's very, very different. I mean, the one that springs to my mind is like an intervention or something like that, where this person, is doing harm to themselves and you want that to stop. So you impose their will, or you impose your will to try and get them to stop whatever it is they're doing to hurt themselves or other people. Prison is another example of this. All right. So there are those examples, and we could say then that the imposition of will is not even inherently evil necessarily. It's about why, I think. It's about what it is you're trying to achieve. What outcome is it? In the case of like prisons or criminal justice, you're trying to keep people from hurting each other, ideally. Honestly, that's not where we're at here in the West, but in a perfect world, that is what the prison system is designed to do. That's what the judicial system is designed to do, to set up safeguards so people can't impose their will on other people and harm them in the doing, right? So what I would say to you is without knowing your circumstance, if the reason that you want to impose yourself on other people is because there's stuff that you want and you think that if you impose your will on other people, you can get it, and you know that it will hurt them, or harm them in some way, it will come back to you. It will. And I'm not even talking metaphysically. People can feel it. That's why I brought up politics in the first place. You can feel when someone's will is being imposed on you. You can feel it. I tend to skew more on the liberal side. So with the last president, I could feel that constant imposition. And that constant imposing of will on me, because I tend to skew more liberal, is a massive turnoff, right? Because again, I fall in love. I don't fall in line. I like to be inspired. I like to be motivated. I like to be spoken to like I'm an equal. Okay. On the conservative side of that, it's more about competence and the ability to execute a plan and the ability to order things and then execute on the way that you ordered them. And so from that standpoint, this imposing of will is actually an asset. It's actually strength. It's actually something that they're responding to as like a yes. That guy gets it. That guy knows how to do it. That guy's effective. All right. Just different strokes for different folks, I think. So the reason it comes back to you purely pragmatically is because people will feel it and they will respond to you. And they will respond to you imposing yourself on them. And they won't respond pleasantly. The best that could happen is they just remove you from their lives. The worst is that they actively seek retribution. In either case, you're alone. You're where Crowley ended up. You're alone and you're on the defensive, and you are where every single tyrant, every single person who has ever imposed their will on anybody ultimately ends up. Alone and defending themselves and their own self-image against the people who they have harmed. If that's the sort of place you want to be, right? Because in esotericism, we don't have hard and fast rules. This is all nuance. That's why it's taken so long to answer this question. If that's the sort of place you want to be, go for it, I say. People are going to push back. It's going to suck. But if you think the reward of whatever it is that you want is alluring enough, and you think that you have enough presence of mind now to even know what you really want, if you're already that far down that track, then I'm surely not going to stop you, nor is anybody else. You're already on the path. If you want to actually get better, though, with whatever it is you're dealing with, if you want to actually grow, if you want to actually change, if you want to be a better person, do better for the people around you, if that sort of thing is appealing to you, then I would say stop right now, walk it back, do some meditating, do some listening, do some journaling, and open yourself up to the basic idea that you don't know what you want right now, not really, and that the best thing that you can do is try and be more present and try and be more, in every moment. Because if you're in every moment, then you can see what's wrong with those moments a little bit clearer. And if you can see what's wrong with those moments, then maybe you can solve some of the stuff. And you don't have to screw anybody over to do it. Okay? Long answer to a short question. Please ask questions. We'll be here until 8 o'clock tonight. All right. Oh, I didn't even talk about your reading. Jesus. Temperance. Balance. Okay? Balance, I do think we talked about this last week. I really think we do. See how but I don't know if you were here last week. See how the water is going kind of from cup to cup there, and this angel figure with the triangle. Triangle is about balance, right? It's a perfectly balanced shape in geometry. The water being poured back and forth between cups. This is about balancing emotions, balancing the intuitive, balancing all the sort of classically feminine energies, and I mean feminine in like a divine case, a divine sense. Balancing those energies, right? And then you have the 9. You have someone weeping in their bed here, having just woken up, it looks like, in pain, and these swords looming over their mind as if they've somehow inserted themselves in their consciousness. This is about nightmares. This is about, sort of the emotions that a nightmare reality brings. Things like depression, things like anxiety, things like a sense of things closing in around you, things so out of your control because they're coming from a place in you that you don't feel like you have conscious control over, like nightmares. You don't have conscious control over nightmares. So when they occur, part of what's so scary about it is you suddenly are aware, if you're not living in this awareness every day anyway, you're suddenly aware that you're not alone in here, which most, I think, esotericists and metaphysicists have already grappled with. But if you haven't grappled with that fact, if you think that you are a singular identity in this body, I would encourage you to look into Carl Jung, because he will quickly, kind of show you how it's not true, that there's a whole communication factory going on in this body and in your body. Multiple selves stepping forward and taking present control at any given moment. Once you accept that, it's kind of comforting to know you're not fully alone in here. And it's kind of nice to know that your dreams can guide you, that the things that you see in meditation can guide you. Whether or not you want to believe that there are elements out there that are inserting themselves in your consciousness is really up to you. I don't think it matters much. I think the idea that I can fall asleep and have a dream, and that dream might give me something, is beautiful in and of itself. That there is some form of benevolence so deep in me is beautiful. Even if it appears terrifying, even if it appears as a nightmare. Oftentimes, a lot of clinical psychologists would say something like nightmares are responses to repression, or all dreams are responses to repression. Things that you're perceiving in your daily life but not fully grappling with insert themselves into your dream space so that you can be reminded that you have to deal with whatever this thing is. So if you're constantly dreaming about snakes, let's say, I'm not good at dream interpretation, but I'm going to fake it. So you're constantly dreaming about snakes, and let's remove all the, let's say that there's not like a real snake god out there who's trying to tell you something, but you're dreaming about snakes all the time. You're dreaming about snakes biting you. Well, keep in mind here that you have General Kratos. You have an entire bedrock of mythology running through your mind at every single moment of every single day. So a snake is not just a snake. A snake is 500,000 stories about snakes that you've encountered throughout your entire life, all embodied in your subconscious mind by this single image of a snake. So when a thing is appearing to you in a nightmare or a dream space, a bad way to interpret dreams is to say a snake means this. That's a shitty, horrible, unnuanced, unelegant, which is probably, I think, the biggest insult I can give anything. If something is not elegant, Disregarded immediately, as far as I'm concerned. Elegance is everything. Grace is everything. Nuance is everything, right? Fascism is the deliberate removal of nuance. I think there's a reason that's true. Nuance is everything, right? The beauty is found in the gray. The beauty is found in the undefinable. The beauty is found outside the parameters that we set for ourselves in our life. That's why the listening and the goodness and the love and the open and the hearing and the receiving is better in the end, even if it doesn't feel better. The only reason desire feels good is because you can actually do something about it. You can actually go out and impose your will. That's why it feels good to hurt other people sometimes. And it feels good to like do what you really want to do. You want to beat the gun, you want to just, that feels good because it feels like you're directly advancing yourself somehow. It feels like you're directly, I don't know, taking control over this chaotic life space that you're in. But the truth, the horrible truth, the metaphysical truth, the esoteric truth is the idea of control is an illusion from the very bottom of the idea all the way up. You have no control, period, end of story. And asserting control doesn't mean you have it. You have to play around with control a bit and power a bit to see that that's true. And sometimes you can take power. Sometimes, you know, in your life, you can set up situations where it makes you feel more powerful, but everybody's gonna die. You know, this is the core truth that we're all running from. And all of, you know, Western thought doesn't want to contend with, but it's the truth. Everybody's gonna die on some basic fundamental level. You could not choose when you were born. You cannot choose when you die. And everything in the middle is exactly as chaotic as those two events, right? We don't want to believe it, but it's true. It's true, it's true, it's true. So I would bet you're having nightmares. I would bet you're having trouble sleeping, having bouts of insomnia. I would bet you're having thoughts that are intrusive, that are scary. I mean, you're talking about evil. So I would imagine that that's true. I'm going to tell you, I mean, this is rapidly becoming controversy corner. I'm saying a bunch of stuff that I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with. But I think it's true. I'm a chaos magician. I don't, good and evil is, it's not how I live my life. I stopped being a Christian as a child for a good reason. I don't think it works. Evil thoughts, right? If you're dreaming about doing an evil thing and you get a rush of excitement from it, it doesn't make you a bad person. If you're dreaming about hurting someone and it gives you a thrill, it doesn't make you a bad person. You know what does? Believing that it makes you a bad person. That's what makes you a bad person. Because then you repress it, but you can't get rid of it. All emotions, everything finds its way out. All you can control is how. All you can do is give it space to come out healthily. If you're dreaming, I'm gonna tell you something. I don't know how old you are or anything. If you're like 12, log this in your mind for future use. If you're dreaming about controlling someone physically, let's just take an evil act, all right? A classically evil act. Let's say you're dreaming about controlling someone physically, whatever that means to you. Someday, you might express that desire to someone, and they might say to you, that is all I've ever wanted, is to be controlled. I just want to be controlled. I'm talking about root chakra stuff now. I'm talking about stuff that lives deep in us. That stuff that vibrates, you know? That sort of stuff, that sexy stuff, that stuff that when it appears in our lives, we can't even fully understand the feeling because it's so primal. We're animals. It just grabs you. Somebody someday might say to you, my thing that's lived down here, you're telling me your thing is you've always wanted to control someone. My thing is I've always wanted to be controlled. And then the two of you are off to the races. You set your rules, you set your boundaries, you set your safe words, and you're doing X and they're doing Y, and it's heaven. It's heaven on earth. And there's no evil occurring because the will exchange is even, right? They're doing what they want, and that happens to be giving you what you want. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's beautiful. I don't care what it is. I don't care what, horrible, evil act it is. It is beautiful to give someone that, or for someone to give you that, if both parties are in total agreement that it's okay. As long as it's not hurting anybody else, and they're having a good time with it, and nobody's going too far or anything. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. End of story. So if you are having stuff like this, I say all that to say that if you're having stuff like this, it likely means that some subconscious urges or desires or things that you've encountered in your life haven't quite been dealt with. You haven't integrated them into your conscious reality. You haven't let yourself say, oh, I am really into that. I really like that. Whatever that is, it appeals to me. And then you have to ask yourself the question, why? What is the thing? You know, what is the act or the desire or whatever that's under it that is actually appealing to you emotionally? And then you do some work over time, shadow work, if you want to look it up. You do some work over time to integrate those desires into your conscious life. And maybe you find someone who fulfills them, or maybe understanding them removes their pressure. That's more often the case, is that once you come to understand that I'm the sort of person who likes to do X, or I like this evil act, the understanding of it removes it of its power, right? That's why in classic demonology, we say that knowing a demon's name removes its power, because there's a metaphor in that. And the metaphor is that if you know an evil, if you know the name of an evil thing, which is to say that if you know how it appeals to you and why you want to do it, that is like 85% of removing its hold. But you have to explore them honestly to understand them in order to get to that place. So then the last one here, this is your Page of Pentacles. You can see it's like an androgynous person holding up a single coin in a field with a mountain and all kinds of fun, beautiful nature going on in the background. This person looks young because they are typically young. All the pages are kind of young. So this card specifically, I mean, all the pentacles talk about money and they talk about material stuff. Simple. Material. Easy to define. This typically speaks of a young person new to a kind of money. So like a new job or anything like that, really. So maybe you're grappling a little bit with money stuff or influence stuff, or thinking that influence and money are the same thing, or thinking that power and money are the same thing. You wouldn't be alone in that. A lot of people think that in this day and age. Maybe you're thinking about raising money, or you just got some like money news or something like that. This card speaks to a lot of those sorts of things. It's a sort of person who's not used to a kind of money, starting to get that kind of money, or desiring that kind of money or something like that. So my overall take on this reading of all three of these cards is you are out of balance. And I would guess that the things that are out of balance are something doing with subconscious mind, dreams, desires, fantasies, and money or power or influence or material goods. Okay. Let me know if I'm on point. Even if I'm not on point, tell me I am so I can feel good about myself, please. So the answer to that is reconciliation. That's the answer. Shadow work. It's acknowledging the parts of yourself that want to do evil, right? Because that's the question you asked. Acknowledging parts of yourself that want to do evil, examining why you want to do it, and then doing the hard work of reconciling those desires. So there you go. I hope that's helpful, General Kratos. I really, really do. And thank you, everybody in chat, for helping him out. I hope he walks away from this a little bit better. We've strayed wildly from talking about rationalism and materialism. But I think basically where we left that off is it is rational in the West to embrace esotericism, because esotericism can make you wildly happy. And I use those words carefully. Wildly happy. Meaning a happiness that's not super controllable or confinable or definable. A happiness that seems to be coming from outside and inside. A happiness that feels cosmic and personal simultaneously. I don't really know anything in materialism that does that. and can do that repeatedly and can do that almost at will, where the magical worldview can and does. Magical worldview constantly reminds you that you are a fascinating creature filled with all these different aspects, and that leaning into any one of them at any given time is the great work of your life. Understanding them, playing with them, not letting yourself remain static in any space for too long, but enjoying all the aspects of yourself and not judging them. And if they're harming other people, finding ways to express them, that don't harm other people. Art does that. But again, I find a lot of materialists' art to be technical, overly technical. Art does it. Religion can do it, I suppose. But if it's doctrinal, it's setting a lot of rules, and rules tend to remove fun. And this should be fun. There's a reason we light candles in dark rooms and dance around naked with daggers. It's not because it does anything. It's because it's fun. It's fun to be naked in the woods and sing songs. It's fun to do sex magic. It's fun to drink wine as a part of ritual. It's fun to cut yourself and let your blood drip onto the ground and look at your carnal nature woven in with the carnal nature of the planet from whence you came, to remind yourself that you are on some fundamental deep level nothing but that dirt, and that dirt is nothing but you. It's fun and it's sexy and it's cool and it's rad, and I've never felt that way in church. I never felt that way in church. Not even once. Not even close. So it's fun. It's sexy. It's cool. Fun, sexy, cool matters, right? I think. Yeah. So there you go. There's some arguments to help you move from rationalism and materialism into esotericism and magic. I hope that was helpful. This was fun today. I got pretty tipsy because I hadn't eaten. This is my first caloric intake of the day. Kratos, feel free to email me, my man. I hope that was helpful. I hope everybody had a good time today. Thanks for tuning in to the stream. We're going to bounce. Come back next week for more. Send questions, comments, concerns. Joel@ToSalem.com. JOEL@TOSALEM.com. You're all the best. Hopefully Magic in the Void comes out next week. It's getting too big. It's getting too big. It's like a 40-minute video at this point. Thank you, 365. Have a great week, everybody. I'll see you next Friday. Stay weird, witches. Bye-bye.